Okay, so let's start. I'll start it with a very beautiful quote given by John Quincy Adams, and here it goes. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. The guest that we have among us today has always been my source of inspiration and somebody who made me believe that yes, I am possible. A warm welcome to Mr. Rajiv Pant in our program, Learning the Art of Communication, under the scheme Sampark, a social initiative taken by Kumaon University, Nainital. We all know that good communication skill is the crux of everything that we do in our life. It is the most essential skill, not just to succeed professionally, but also in personal life. Good relationship, that is the first prerequisite to become an effective leader, can only be achieved with better communication skill. Our youngsters should understand its value. Today, Rajiv Sir, who himself has been recognized and awarded throughout the world for his leadership qualities, will share his experience on the topic developing genuine relationship at work. This, I believe, will prove to be a hands-on approach for all of us to become effective leader in our respective fields. And we should always remember, and John F. Kennedy has also quoted, that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. Now, before passing on the mic to Sir, I would like to complete the formality, although in my heart I very well know that he doesn't need any introduction. Mr. Rajiv Pant is a respected product design and engineering executive. He served as Chief Product and Technology Officer of the Wall Street Journal, New York, USA. He's also been Deputy CTO of News Corp, parent company of WSJ, and several other global brands. Previously, as Chief Technology Officer of the New York Times, he led the successful development and delivery of dozens of acclaimed mobile and web products over 4 years. It was there in 2014 that he was also honored by World Economic Forum as a young global leader. And prior to his move to the New York Times, he was Vice President of Digital Technology at Condé Nast for 4 years. Earlier to that, he was also Chief Technology Officer at Coxnet, a division of Cox, one of the nation's leading media and communications companies. It was during this tenure that he received the Newspaper Association of America's 20 Under 40 Award. This followed a stint of nearly a decade at Knight Ridder, then the nation's second largest newspaper publisher. As a Vice President of Technology at Knight Ridder Digital in St. Joe's, he led the development and implementation of company's website products. He also worked closely with newsroom colleagues at the Philadelphia Inquirer and Philadelphia Daily News. He has twice received the prestigious Knight Ridder Excellence Award for Technology Innovation. And among the products developed by him and his team in Kofax, a leading open source content management system used by newspaper and other companies around the world. Apart from that, he is known for his leadership qualities that are also recognized when 2 development teams under his direction received 2 separate newspaper Association of America 2004 Best Practice Award in New Media. The first for the development of web and multi-platform publishing tools, and a second for a software upgrade system for high-traffic websites. He has got an experience of building and supervising small teams to 400 plus employees. He is admired for his win-win collaborative style by his peers. He strives to live every day by his life motto, victory is winning people over and not defeating others. With that note, now I hand over the mic to Sir. The session is all yours now.
The reason I'm interested in talking about building genuine relationships at work is because most people, everyone has their own strength at a job. Some people are brilliant technologically, they know how to solve the most complicated problems. There are some people who are very good at sales. There are some people who are really good writers and speakers who are very articulate. And it takes a very diversity of, it takes a big diversity of skills to make an organization work. So every person brings a different kind of strength and weakness to the organization. what I have found that has been helpful to me in my career has been really strong, genuine relationships with my colleagues at work. And I realize this is sort of the end of the day for all of you, and so I'll try to make this interesting. I'll tell you a few stories from my career, and I will end the talk with 5 specific pieces of advice based on what I learned in my work. Uh, so that way it's not just generic stuff that you could have read and learned in books and other places as well, but I want to speak more from my experience. So I'll start with telling you a few stories before I get into why it's important to build genuine relationships at work and what it means, and then of course talk about how you can do that. But the first is, I learned at one time, I had this interesting experience. We were working on and I realized this is also a very diverse audience, so I will not speak specific to product development or technology, but this is pretty generic, so people from any field should be able to follow along. But I worked at a newspaper in Philadelphia at one point, and we were building a content management system. And basically what the content management system at a newspaper does is that it enables all the journalists to manage, write, and compose all their stories together, do that in a collaborative way, and then publish them automatically on the website. So we were building this tool, and this was early in my career. And as technology has a lot of problems, our content management system wasn't working, had an outage for about, for several hours in a day. And while I was doing this, I was naturally very frustrated because the system that I and my colleagues at work had built was having all these problems. It was crashing. And one of the senior editors from the newsroom came to work with us to help figure out why it wasn't working and how to fix it. And he spent the entire day, and we had a lot of problems. And it was a pretty frustrating day for me. And we were all very proud of the system we had built, but it was having major problems. So anyway, at the end of the day, or at some point, we fixed the issues. It was all done, and he went back to his main job in the newsroom. And I was obviously very nervous and scared that, hey, this was still early in my career. I was a software engineer, and I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. This is a really bad situation. And our system had all these issues. But surprisingly, that didn't happen. But a few days later, I saw that the same senior editor, he was interviewed by a trade publication. And in this interview, he said very flattering and great things about how awesome our CMS was and how well it worked and what a great job the team had done. And I was really confused. I was thinking, wait a minute, I thought my system had all these problems. We were failing. And why is he praising our system, in an interview and saying all these great things? I was genuinely confused. I didn't understand why he was saying such great things about our work, while objectively, if you looked at it logically, my system had a lot of problems. So fast forward to another similar story. When I worked in this job for a few years. I was promoted a few times, and then I was promoted to the vice president of engineering job at Knight Ridder, the parent company of this newspaper. So I was then working in San Jose, California, and there was a time when I had gone on a vacation to Hawaii. And at that time, cell phones didn't work everywhere, and certainly not in Hawaii. And I tried to keep my phone away from me anyway. So when I came back to the hotel room late in the night, I had a voice message from my CEO. And when your CEO calls you on your vacation, I thought, okay, I'm in serious trouble. There's something big wrong, because I thought about all the things I had done wrong, at work. And again, my thought was, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. Something is really bad, because the CEO knows I'm on vacation and he's calling me on my vacation, and what's happening. And I can't even express to you, my heart was beating, and I was thinking, why is he telling me now during my vacation? And, couldn't he wait until I'm back? And then I thought about another major software product system my team had built. And the system also had problems and issues and stuff at work. And I was very nervous. I thought, that's clearly it. And that's the reason we are going to get fired. So I couldn't call him at that time because of the time zone difference. By the way, we do have multiple time zones in the United States, so that's sometimes a challenge. But I finally mustered up enough courage, and my heart was beating really hard. I picked up the phone, I called the CEO, just preparing myself to get fired. And he says to me, hey, congratulations, you and your team have won the second excellence award in Knight Ridder for the same system that I thought was having all these problems. I was literally shocked. And I was thinking, hey, wait a minute, how can this possibly be? Not only am I not in trouble for this system, but my company thinks this system is amazing, and they're giving my team and I this big award, which from several thousand employees goes to only one in this category. So I began to think about how this happened, that, sometimes, even though I had worked on these projects, and my understanding of their status was different than the understanding that many of my colleagues had. So I learned a few lessons in both of those. The first was when I worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I thought my system had issues. One of the things we did without knowing was that when the editor came to work with us, instead of being defensive, a lot of times people are defensive. If your system is broken, what do? You say, oh, no, it's not broken, it's actually your fault, or it's a user error. People don't take ownership. But the first thing I did was, because I was genuinely nervous, and perhaps because I had grown up in India in a culture where I wasn't, at least for me personally, I wasn't such a super confident person. I immediately owned up all the mistakes, explained to this editor all the things that were broken in the system, what we were working to fix it. I was not at all defensive. I did not try to justify that, oh, this is a very difficult problem, or that it's not my fault, it's some other software. And because I did that, and then I also listened to him and engaged this editor in helping fix the problem, even though he was not a technologist. He was a journalist. He didn't know anything about, I shouldn't say anything about technology, but anything about software engineering and those processes. But what I learned in this process was, when I engaged him so much in this, it wasn't my system anymore. It was our system. It was his system. And he was not going to feel, if it was his baby too, he was not going to feel that this system sucks and it is bad, because then it was his job to fix it. And because he spent the entire day fixing this problem with us, it was not like it was my problem and my team's problem, that the technical people who had broken something and were fixing it. He was part of the solution. So after that, when he was interviewed by this publication, he was very proud of this system because he felt great. It was his thing as well. So that was what I learned there. In the second system, where my team and I won the award, when I thought about it, I realized we had worked the same way. We had included the rest of the company in the implementation of the system. We had built it with them, not just for them. And when you collaborate with people in a way that you create inclusiveness, and you help other people feel that what you have built is also theirs, it's not your own, it's not like my department's thing, it's the whole company's product, then people feel a lot of co-ownership. And when people feel co-ownership in something, they are far more likely to support your product, and they will be with you whether things are going well or not. So these two experiences really taught me the value. And now you will notice throughout my talk, when I talk about building relationships, I'm not going to be talking about, you call people for parties or you go out drinking. I pretty much almost never drink. I don't really go out for people on that kind of social stuff that a lot of other people do. But I believe that the best way to build relationships in a job and at work is by actually rowing together. Like if you're on a boat, you're rowing together, you're actually working together. I'll tell you of stories of how people drinking together and so on is actually ineffective and not a good strategy. But before I get to that, I want to also give you a little bit more of a specific example of what it means, because you may be wondering, I told you these two stories of how these people were won over and supported my systems, but without the detail, you may be wondering, okay, what exactly did I do? So I'll tell you another brief story to give you an example. There was a colleague of mine, Don, who I worked with at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And to be fair, he was sometimes a slightly challenging person to work for. He did not have the world of respect for us engineering technology types. He was a journalist, and like many journalists, he was very proud of his work. Yeah, he still is. And sometimes he would come up behind us and be like, hey, how come this isn't fixed? Or, he would be annoying to us. It ticked us off sometimes because, he'd be like, hey, why isn't this done yet? Why isn't it fixed yet? And we had a similar, sometimes contemptuous relationship with him, where we would be annoyed with him, and our attitude used to be like, hey, you don't know what we are doing. Why are you like questioning us? We don't tell you how to write your story. But you know, that is sometimes how we felt internally, but we learned how to behave differently. So when one day my colleagues Carl and Sam and I were working on solving a problem, a very deeply technological problem, Don walked up behind us, and in his usual way that kind of annoyed us sometimes, he asked, what are you guys doing? And we knew clearly what he meant to say was, what's broken? And you guys, how come, when I'm writing a story nothing is broken, how come when you're doing technology something is broken? And he came up with that kind of attitude. But I turned to him, and obviously I'm human, so for a few seconds I was irritated. I knew he was trying to needle us a little bit. But I turned to him, and for some reason, I don't know why, instead of treating him like an adversary, I treated him like a friend. And I explained to him, and I was using this computer programming language called Java, where we had written this code, and obviously he didn't know this programming language, he knew English. But just out of, I don't actually understand why I did this, but I turned to him and I explained to him the whole problem that was in the technical programming language in plain English, just for, I don't know, maybe just to just get it out of my system. I explained the whole problem to him. And somehow, to my surprise, within like literally 6 seconds, I'm perhaps exaggerating about the time, but within 6 seconds, he gives me a solution to the problem that the three of us, we thought we were the smartest programmers around, that we were not able to solve for like 6 hours. We were smashing our head against the wall. I mean, not literally, of course, but this guy who had never written a line of code in his life, without knowing any computer programming languages, he solved in plain English once I explained the problem to him in English. And it was a humbling experience for me, but it was also great because he solved the problem. And I was kind of stunned. But the reason this story really is important to me and stuck in my mind for many years is that at times we look at our colleagues and think, oh, you don't know this domain. Let's say I'm a really good salesperson, and a tech person or somebody else comes up to me and has an idea, and you go like, come on, I've been doing sales for 10 years. I'm an expert. I don't need to listen to you. You go do your thing. That's the attitude people take. And sometimes I would take. But what I learned is that if you genuinely learn to respect others, and I don't mean just showing respect, showing respect is one thing, but feeling respect for other things is a different thing. If you actually feel respect for other people, they can be incredibly helpful. And from that day, my relationship and my team's relationship with Don Henry completely changed. He became a really strong ally of ours. Before, sometimes he would sort of compete with us. He was doing some project management, and not compete, but he would try to get us to do what he wanted and so on. But after this experience, he became a really good partner. And all I had to do was listen to him and explain to him something that I thought, in my arrogance at that time, I thought he would not understand. He not only understood, but he solved something that we couldn't solve, which was our expertise, so stuff that I had gone to school for and studied. I had been writing computer code since, I don't know, second grade or something. I'd been a programmer since I was a little child. And this guy who had never done anything in this field solved it. So I want to say there's a difference between, feigning respect, which is kind of fake respect, where you say to people, oh, hello, so-and-so, you treat them with a certain respect. That's one thing. To express respect for somebody is also another thing, where you may mean it or not. But what's really important is having respect in your heart, even if you never show it, even if you don't say to the person, hey, you are great, you're doing a good job, or anything like that. But the thing is, if you genuinely feel respect for other people in your heart, your behavior towards them will change in very noticeable ways. And when people begin to notice those things, all your subconscious signs and other things will show, and those people will genuinely behave with you differently. And by the way, a lot of this comes from human evolutionary biology and social science, because I realize I'm not doing this in person with all of you in a classroom. We are doing this over Zoom, so this is different. But what happens is, anytime a person interacts with you, our eyes, ears, all our senses pick up a lot of nonverbal cues. So if I don't respect somebody and I say to them, good morning, sir, or good morning, madam, they know I don't respect them. They know in their mind I'm thinking this person is an idiot, right? But on the other hand, if I walk into the office, look at my CEO, and I smile in a certain way, even if I don't say hello sir or something, but I smile in a certain way, they can sense that I'm respecting this person. They may not know how they know, but based on cues that human beings over, you know, several thousand years have evolved, we have learned to pick up these nonverbal behaviors. So one thing I would say to all of you is that no matter how good you think you are, unless you are a movie actor or something like that, you are not going to be able to fake your emotions. So if you want to show respect to other people, learn to respect them. Now you might wonder, you know, sometimes people have said to me when I've given them this advice at work, hey, but so-and-so colleague of mine is an idiot. I don't want to show them any respect. How can I respect them? They are a fool. So the first thing I would say is, look, all of us are idiots and all of us are fools in some way or the other. What you have to find is, if you want to genuinely respect somebody, you find something about them that they admire, that you admire. And if you find something about this person that you admire and you focus on that, you will discover other things about them that you admire. And then one pretty amazing thing happens. The minute you begin to admire and respect things about people, even if in the beginning you thought they were a fool and there was nothing to respect about them, you will notice that their behavior will start changing. And once their behavior starts changing, you will find that they will treat you differently, and you will find even more real substantial things to respect about them. And so that's my key advice on respect. If you are working with other people and in the beginning you think, oh, this person, you know, I don't like them, I don't respect them, look for something to like. You will discover more. So that's my view on why. Now, at this point, I want to pause for a second. If anybody has a question, I'm also happy to. I'll have some time at the end for questions. But if there are any questions or comments, or at least if I could get a quick show of hands, did what I speak about so far make sense?
Yes, participants. Yeah, there is one hand being raised by Gitanjali ma'am.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Okay, great. So I'll continue, or I'll
Yes.
say, you know, if
It's
there was
very
something.
interesting. Please carry on.
Great.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So I want to speak a little bit about why relationships at work, right? Like, of course, I gave you these stories from my career and how they helped me get to various places in my job. But there are a few other things that help. You know, one, if you are in a leadership role, and by the way, a leadership role, I just don't mean being some kind of, you know, CXO in a company. A lot of roles are leadership roles in a company, even individual contributor roles. In fact, everyone is a leader in some context or the other. So the first thing that'll happen is that if you build genuine relationships at work, people will follow you. And that can be a very powerful thing, because in the line of work where I work in technology, there's a very high demand for people. People have many options of where they can go and work. And it's hard to find really great people who will stick with your company, or people you can already trust, whose skills you already know about. So if you have genuine relationships, people will follow you around. I used to live in Atlanta, and a colleague of mine worked with me there. His family was all from Atlanta. They all lived in that area. And I moved to New York City for a job. And I was looking for somebody with the specific skills that my friend Robert had. And he was really good at mobile software applications. He would build, you know, the apps on your iPhone or your Android phones that many of you use. But this was, you know, in the early 2000s, where there were not too many people who knew how to build these iPhone and Android apps. And so I was talking to him one day, and I said, hey, you know, I wish there was somebody with your talent that I could find and hire in New York. And he said, oh, I'll be happy to come and work with you in New York. And I was a little surprised. I was like, wow, but you know, you and your family, everybody is in Atlanta. And he said, no, I really loved working with you for so many years in Atlanta. I'll do that. And he moved. He still lives in New York. He worked with me for many years. He's a dear friend of mine now. But I found that, you know, he was willing to move from one city to another. And it wasn't for money. It wasn't for any other reason, but it was primarily because he really enjoyed working with me. I'll talk about why that was so in a case. There was another colleague of mine who used to work with me at the New York Times. And when I left the New York Times and went to work for another company, or sorry, actually, he used to work with me at Condé Nast, the company I worked at before the New York Times. And when I went to work at the New York Times, about almost 24 of my former colleagues left their jobs at the previous company where we used to work together and came to work with me at the New York Times. And this one colleague of mine, he said, one day I was hanging out with him after work, and he said, "Hey, you've hired almost everybody else you used to work with in the old company. They all left their jobs to come work for you in this new job. How come you haven't hired me?" And I said to him, "Hey, I really respect you. You are very good at your work. But, right now I don't have a job at the New York Times, which pays as much money as you make in your current job. And I know what you make, obviously, because he was in my team." And I said, "So I would love to hire you someday in the future when I have a big enough job for you." And he looked at me right there and he said, "I'm really insulted that if you think I would not come work for you because of money." And he quit his job. He came, joined me at the New York Times. He took a huge pay cut. And I was kind of very confused. I was like, why would somebody take a huge pay cut like this to come work for a job, at another company, which was not too different? Now, by the way, I do want to say he did a great job, and very soon, he got promotions and raises, and he was, doing very well again. So he made up for all the pay cut he had taken. But at that time, he took the risk. But he did that. He said the same thing to me. He said, "I'll come work with you anywhere." And since then, he has worked with me in 5 different companies. So a lot of people will do this, so when you need talent, if you're in a leadership role, if your relationships with people are real, as a leader, you are only as good as the people in your team. You can't do too much as a leader. You're not going to be building things yourself, hands-on. You're not going to be writing the code yourself, or if whatever kind of work you do, you rely on people. You rely on people to work well with each other, and you rely on people you can trust. So if you have genuine relationships, people will follow you. And if people follow you, that also makes you a very valuable person for companies to hire, because they know that, hey, if we hire this person, really great talent will come and follow this person around. This person will be a magnet for talent. And by the way, if people follow you and they all know you from different contexts, they will also work well with each other. Because one of the problems in many companies is that, people compete with each other in a negative way, or I should say they compete against each other. And teams don't work well. But if a leader keeps the whole team together, that's a benefit. So the first thing is that if you have genuine relationships, you will have a very strong team who will not only have a great relationship with you, but will also have a great relationship with each other. Good for you.
Participants, mute your mic.
Perhaps you could mute your mic.
There is some problem with the mic problem.
You'll be able to.
Participants, please mute yourself.
अंकल वो रेलिंग वाली को मैंने फोन किया था, वो कह रहा था मैं आपको फोन किया है करके।
तो कहाँ रेलिंग लगाएगा ना, पत्थर लगाना है इसके ऊपर, जैसे भी रेलिंग लगेगी।
कितना पत्थर लगेगा?
हाँ, इसके ऊपर पत्थर लगेगा।
Now
it's fine, I think.
Okay, yeah. Okay, great. All right. And by the way, this happens. I totally understand. This pandemic time. The pandemic are unprecedented times, and people have to be at home, and of course lives are very important. So I totally respect when things happen. I've had times. I have a 8-year-old son, and he who knows, he may call me right now. He picks up the phone and he calls me at any time he feels like, because these days people expect that. So anyway, it's totally good. That's not a problem at all. But the other thing I wanted to say was why it's important to have genuine relationships at work is it's also good for your company. So first of all, if your whole team feels part of an in-group, and by the way, the word in-group, for those of you who study social science or social psychology, human beings, this is perhaps a bit of a simplification, but think of others as being in their in-group or in their out-group from a psychology perspective and a social science perspective. And when you feel somebody's in your in-group, you tend to trust them and you work well with others. And if you feel in your out-group approaches you, somewhere deep in our brain, the same circuits activate that used to activate when the saber-toothed tiger is coming from the side, in the cavemen and cavewomen days. So it's important to have most people feel in your organization to be in your in-group so that they work well together. Another thing is that Google, which is a very science and data-driven company where they look at even soft skills like human connections, relationships, from a very data-driven, science-driven, mathematics-driven perspective. Google ran a big project called Project Aristotle. And if you search on actually funny, Google itself, you can find a lot of information about Project Aristotle. And so I won't, don't have enough time on this call to talk you through Project Aristotle, but the key findings of Project Aristotle are this. It found that the teams that are most effective in a job are not the teams that have the smartest people or the most talented people. They are not the teams where the average talent is the highest or the people are the smartest. But the teams where everybody participates are the teams which are the most effective, in teams where there is psychological safety. So if you want to look up on Google a few terms after my talk, look up Project Aristotle. Also look up psychological safety. So when people feel psychological safety, if you feel that my colleagues are not bullies, my colleagues are not going to judge me, they're not going to make fun of me, they're not going to insult me, they will treat me like a human being. When I make a mistake, they will still treat me well and look at my strengths and not focus on my weaknesses. And if they talk about my weaknesses, it will be to help me improve. If people feel this psychological safety, they will perform much better in a job. And a team which is like this outperforms significantly teams which have superstars or teams where everybody has higher education and talent. So to be effective, everybody has to row together in this boat, at the same time. Everybody has to participate. And this project came up with specific advice. So for example, if you're having a meeting at work and you find that this one person is not speaking much, you encourage them to speak. You ask them, hey, what are your thoughts? So managers who behave in that way, who will not just let one speaker in a meeting dominate the meeting, they will lead to better teams and better results. So it's really important for your company. Why I want to mention that usually relationships at work which are based on shallow social activities are far less effective. I have a quick story on this too. Like I remember when I worked in Atlanta, there was a colleague of mine. He would often go out drinking with people at work, and that was his way of socializing. He went out drinking, hung out with these people, and that was his kind of, his way of connecting with his colleagues. And for a long time, I thought that he and his colleagues were really good friends because they seemed to go out drinking every, other whatever time. But at one day I noticed when things weren't going so well for him at work, all of the people, instead of helping him, they were kind of bad-mouthing him. And in fact, they were all talking about how he drinks all the time and doesn't focus on his work. And I was kind of very surprised that I thought, oh, wait a minute, I thought all these people were his friends. But they clearly not only didn't support him, but they were working to get him fired, and not for some negative reason, not for some bad political reason. They were working to get him fired because they felt he was not competent. So what I noticed, what I learned from that experience with this colleague was that the reason I am talking about genuine relationships at work, not just relationships at work, is there is a significant difference. So when I build a relationship with a coworker because there was a big problem my team or my company was facing, and we worked through many hours in the evening or worked through a whole night to solve this problem together, we have developed a genuine relationship. And that relationship will probably last a lifetime. And that kind of person you can count on. That is the kind of person who will say, hey, listen, I will take a huge pay cut to come work with you because I know you were there for me when I needed the help. Or you helped me if I was struggling in my job, instead of judging me as your boss or as a colleague, you helped me solve the problem. But a person with whom you go, hanging out, socializing, watching movies together, that's all fine and good. But that doesn't develop strong, lifelong relationships. So if you want to have lifelong relationships with your colleagues at work, where they will genuinely help you with things and you will genuinely help them, try to solve real work problems together. And it's totally fine, for people who enjoy drinking or, spending time socially, going to sports together. All that is perfectly fine. Once in a while, I will do that too. But for me, that is not the way to build relationships. That's sometimes, you just need a way to relax or recharge or get out of work. And that's totally fine. I also go on, I go on hiking trips with people I work with. We've gone to a skating rink together, even though I can't really skate to, for 5 minutes standing up, I'll probably fall down. But I still do those things. I go to my colleagues' homes and hang out with them. But the real way to develop relationships at work is to work on really difficult problems together and not think about, I've done my part. But if your colleague is struggling, you help them with what they are doing. So that's another part of the how. So the one thing to do that, and I really stress this word genuine, is to take a genuine and active interest in other people's work. Sometimes for those of you who've seen these Dilbert comics, there's the pointy-haired boss in Dilbert, who walks around his employees and he asks people, hey, how you doing? How is the family? And then he just walks on. And it's funny. So sometimes some colleagues of mine at work had developed this joke where we would walk up to each other and say, how's your family? And then immediately walk away without even waiting to listen for the answer. It was like our joke of, but of course we were good friends. But you don't want to be that person at the office. I've seen people where they'll ask, how are you doing? And, and this is as the world becomes more materialistic and everybody's busy, the cultures begin to change. When I was a child growing up in India, this was not less common. In smaller cities in America, this doesn't happen as much. But in the big cities, the fast-moving cities, the New Yorks, the Bombays of the world, people ask you, how are you doing? And then regardless of whatever you say, because they haven't heard what you say, they'll say, oh, good, good. And then they'll walk on. Even if you said, I'm very sad and depressed and everything is going terrible in my life, they'll say, oh, very good, because they didn't hear what you said. So don't be that person. Take an active interest. If you ask a colleague how you're doing or how's your family, then listen to their answer. If you don't want to listen to how their family is doing, don't ask them about their family. So help people with their projects. And I would say in most places in a job, unless you are in sales, and sales is something that is not my expertise, so I don't know much about sales. So maybe that world is a little bit different. But at least in every other field where I have worked in, I would say, try to collaborate more and compete less. And when you compete with people, compete with them as teammates, don't compete against them. And if you change jobs, keep in touch with your colleagues from your previous jobs, because that shows that those relationships are real. And many times they could hire you, they could bring you into their company or vice versa. So that's helpful. So the last thing I want to do is to end this. I want to speak through 5 specific lessons I learned working as a CTO in many different major media companies. So the first piece of my advice is, when you're working with your colleagues, instead of trying to be a salesperson, be a friend, be a real friend to your colleagues. So, if you want to win people over to your idea, don't try to win an argument or a debate. Something at your job is not a debate where you have to defeat the other person and win them over. So the only way I believe, to win over somebody else to your way of thinking is for yourself to have an open mind to their way of working. Because if I already believe, even if I believe my solution is right, and I'm a technologist, sometimes I'm like that, I like to believe my solution is right. But if I go in with this attitude that I'm right, and because I'm the boss, you're wrong, then I will never win them over. Because even if they agree to go my way, their heart will not be with my solution. And when something breaks, they will go, oh, this idiot boss, he told me to do it this way because he's not close to this technology. That's what they're going to feel. So the first thing I do is I go in with an open mind, no matter how strongly I feel inside that they are wrong. And I will listen to their solution, and I will express that respect. So the benefit of that is, regardless of whether they go with my solution or that person's solution, if I have gone in with an open mind, even if they agree to go with my solution, they will never say, oh, it didn't work because we went with your solution, because they know I treated them with respect, because then they own the solution also. And on the other hand, if we go with the other person's solution, then they will work their hardest to make it work. Even if it was not as good as a solution as mine, it'll end up being more successful than mine, because they know that their boss or their colleague trusted them. So the first thing is, if you want other people to have an open mind to you, you need to have an open mind to them. So that's the first thing. The second part is, this is a mistake I find a lot of people make at work, is trying to speak to somebody's mind, not to their heart. You know, a large part of our human decision making, as more and more modern science and studies are showing, is emotional. You know, people don't just make logical decisions. If you look at people when they vote for elections, or they listen to a boss at a project, or they do something, in many cases, human beings are not like Mr. Spock on Star Trek, you know, who would make a spreadsheet and look at all the pros and cons and make the most logical and rational decision. We many times make decisions based on our gut, and we are human. I don't know if that will ever change. You know, society has changed, technology has changed, but our minds are the way our brains have evolved have not changed. So if you want to win over a colleague, don't start the discussion with, hey, you're wrong, your idea sucks. Because when you say your idea sucks or your idea is stupid, you're actually saying you are stupid. You know, I've had some very intelligent colleagues say to me, hey, but I didn't tell this person, I didn't say to him or her that you are stupid. I only said their idea is stupid, right? Because they are thinking something logically. And people who come from certain cultures, some part of the world, their cultures are like that they speak like this. Hey, this is a really stupid idea. This is bad, right? But when you work in a very integrated world where people come from a very diversity of cultures, you have to understand that for many people in this world, saying that my idea is stupid is the same as saying that I'm stupid. So it's a good thing to not say that to people, is to say, and if you want to win over somebody, you want to help them understand, instead of pointing out their mistakes, ask them questions with empathy that help them discover their own mistakes. You know, so rather than tell somebody, hey, you are wrong, you ask them a question. First, ask them to explain, you know, and explain in a way where you have an open heart to them. And sometimes when people are explaining a bad idea to you, they'll realize, oh, you know what, this is not such a bad idea. And because they feel psychological safety with you, they are open in saying, oh, you know what, actually, no, this is my idea, it wasn't good, let's go a different way. Now, if they don't feel psychological safety with you, if they feel that you're the kind of boss who's going to say, oh, I told you I'm right, I'm smart, and you are a fool, then of course they are never going to admit a mistake or tell you, right? So one of the things I found very effective was, when something broke, when I was at the New York Times, our publisher and CEO, if something went wrong, I went to them and said, hey, this has gone wrong because, you know, it's my fault. I took ownership of it. And when I take ownership of something, they know that if I said something is broken because of my fault, they know when I say something, I have fixed it or I have a solution, they trust me, right? The kind of person who tries to hide something, people will not trust you. So it's important from both sides. If you are the person who's the employee who's going to their boss, show them that you are a person who's not afraid to admit their mistakes, so they will trust you. You'll actually do better in your career. You know, I can certainly attest this from my jobs. In jobs I've worked in where I admitted my mistakes, I significantly benefited from it. And when you are on the other side, give people that safety. Give people that safety that if they admit a mistake, you're not going to yell at them. You're not going to make them feel small. And you listen to them with respect. So speaking to somebody's heart, connecting with them as a human being is actually also a very effective leadership technique. The third thing is leverage reciprocity. In behavioral psychology, reciprocity is a principle which says that if you have done something for somebody first, they are likely to reciprocate with that favor to you or with some other favor to you. So when somebody needs something in a job, and first of all, you should do this genuinely because you care about other people. But if you meet or you're working with a colleague, they need something. Somebody says, hey, you know, I can't come into work tomorrow because they're going to come and fix the cable TV in my house. First of all, you want to have psychological safety so that your employee doesn't have to lie to you. You know, if you have the right relationship, they'll just say to you, you know, like I remember a day early in my career when I called my boss and said, you know, I'm very behind on paying my bills. I have my phone bill, electric bill, all these things at home. If you don't mind, I'm not going to come to work today. I'm just going to take care of my bills and sort out my stuff is a mess at home. And he said, totally fine. See, but what I loved about that was that I had that relationship with my boss. I did not have to lie. I did not have to say I'm sick, so I can't come in. I just told him, you know, and sometimes in my job, I've told my boss, hey, I'm not feeling that great today. I'm not sick or anything, but I just want to go take a break. I want to go watch a movie or go to the mall. Do you mind if I just take the day off? I can make up for the work some other day. And when I say that, instead of making up a lie like, oh, I am sick, the boss knows, hey, this is a very trustworthy person. He told me he wants to go watch a movie today, so I can trust this person. So not only does my boss say yes, but my boss will likely say, next time I say something when I'm sick, they know I'm sick. I'm not lying. So, don't be afraid. If you are in a job, if you want to go do something, maybe because your cousin is visiting in town and you want to show your cousin around, don't lie to your boss. Don't say, hey, I'm sick, or my aunt is sick or something like that. That's why I can't go to the office. Just tell them, hey, I really care about this job. I work very hard, but my cousin is very important to me. They've come into town. Do you mind if I take a full day or a half day off? That will build a genuine relationship with your boss. And by the way, this is also in psychology, this is called making a non-normative statement. When you make a statement like that, that is not expected, because in most companies, the boss expects you to lie and make up a fake excuse. But when you don't lie and you make a non-normative, very honest statement like that, it builds a relationship. It builds a really strong relationship and people trust you. So when you have small, don't make up small white lies about you're sick or you broke your leg or whatever. Just tell people and ask them, this is what is going on. So that's important. But reciprocity, same way goes to, if somebody says they need to be home for some small reason, let them do that. Of course, keeping in mind people are not misusing privileges. But if you treat people in a good way, if you help them out, if you see an employee struggling, or if a boss walks up to somebody and says, hey, looks like you're having some issue, and the person goes, yeah, I'm having some family things. The boss says, you know what, go home, take care of the thing. That person will probably work weekends and nights for you next time when you need something. So, look out, have this empathy towards people. Look at them in the eye and understand where they're coming from. It's a very powerful thing. The other thing in a job is, a lot of people like to be networkers or middlemen. I would say don't be just a middleman or a networker, be a connector. And the difference between those two is that you should add value to the relationship. Rather than just saying, hey, I'm this person, I know this person and that person, and I can connect the two of them together. What you should do is, when you connect them together, add some value in the relationship, how you help. So if you become a genuine connector in this world, you will find that not only will it help your career significantly, it will also help the people you are connecting much better. And the last thing, the fifth piece of advice I have for this, and this is something I talked about earlier, was taking this genuine interest in other people at work. So when you meet up with somebody, rather than just asking them about their family or other things, ask them about their work. Because, you should, of course, if you care, ask them about their family and other things too. But when you ask a colleague, it doesn't matter. They could be the night watchman in your office. They could be, the assistant, the person who you might think. And by the way, I would hope that, in this modern society, people have less of a class system. And if you feel that somebody is the, assistant or secretary in an office, you treat them with the same human respect as you treat your boss. But you go up to a person and ask them how their job is, right? Now, I'll give you an example. Imagine if somebody has a very entry-level, low-end job in your company and you are a senior executive. And if you go up and ask them, how's your family? That can sometimes be a little bit condescending, because, you are saying to this person, I'm going to ask you the question that obviously I know you have a family, but I'm not going to ask you about your job because your job is unimportant, right? So sometimes what you should do is go ask that person about their job. How's your job going? So like I live in an apartment building in New York City. And, a lot of people make small talk with the people, the receptionist who works in my building, where you enter. But when I walk up to these people, I ask them, hey, how's your work? During the pandemic, is it hard? Are you afraid, of all these people working in? And that's probably not the exact word I use. But I ask them how their job is, and that says to the person that I value them as a human being. So rather than just asking them, oh, how's your life? What's the greatest movie you have watched? Don't assume that somebody's job is not important because they, have a small job in your company. And by the way, those people make a huge difference. The people that you might think in a company are the little people. actually add a lot of value to your organization, and they can also help solve you. Just like I told you the story that the person who was not a programmer, was a pure journalist, helped solve a technical problem. Sometimes the so-called senior leaders, CEOs, VPs, and so on in a company will find that the assistant who has been a secretary for 20 years can solve a leadership problem that they will have failed to solve. So treat that person with respect. Sometimes go to them with a problem of yours. I have done that a number of times. I have sometimes gone to my assistant or to somebody else's assistant and brought to them a problem, a real leadership problem that was part of my job I was struggling with. And they solved it for me. And the only reason I got that problem solved in a way better solved than I could have solved it myself, because I treated this person with a certain respect. And there were a few things, right? First of all, this person had been a secretary to senior people for a very long time. So they sometimes knew how to solve things better than senior people themselves know how to solve, because this person has seen them make mistakes. And the other thing is, even though this person has a lot of solutions, nobody asks them. So if you ask them, they are going to go out of their way to give you a better solution than you could figure out yourself. So, this all goes back to having genuine respect. Don't assume that because somebody has a lower job in your company or a less paying job or something, that they can't do your job better than you. And once you start genuinely thinking that other people have really great skills and they can many times outperform you in your job and help you solve your problems, you go ask them for help, you will be a lot more successful in your job and you will have amazing relationships. So that's all I had to say. I open it up for questions. If you all have time.
Yes, participants, go ahead. If you have any questions, you can ask directly now.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So what, according to you, works as fuel or pillar, I mean major pillar, for building a genuine relationship?
Okay. So I think what works really well as a pillar is to, one, ask people for help. So tracing back to the key themes in my talk is, if you ask people for help, not as an order, but you ask people for help, especially people who are in a less senior position than you build a good relationship with them, because you're treating them as a human being. You're going to them as an advisor. You're not going to them as a senior person, right? So that builds a relationship. And those are the kind of people who will follow you from job to job. I've had literally 20, 30 people leave their previous job, come work with me again. And this is what one of my colleagues wrote for me in my recommendation, that she was a direct report of mine. And she said that he treated me as an equal. And in many meetings, when I was in meetings with her and with other people in the room, I said, listen, it just so happens that she reports to me, but she could easily be my boss. She's qualified to be my boss. And the minute I said something like that, right, she felt, wow, this guy doesn't, he treats me with respect instead of treating me like a subordinate. So that is a very powerful thing. And by the way,
Okay.
you should not be faking that. That should be genuine. So that's
Yes.
the first thing. The first is, if you are in a senior job, ask people for help. The second thing that builds relationship is this, that ask them about their work. How is their job? How do they feel? Don't just ask them about things outside of the job, because when you take an interest in their job, that builds a relationship. And the third thing I would say is to solve problems together, because human beings as a society have evolved in this way from the days of the cavemen. Why is it that animals who are much stronger, more powerful than us, like lions, tigers, and so on, they don't rule the earth? Human beings do, because human beings collaborate. And human beings collaborate because they go to each other and they solve problems together. And that is what has helped us survive. So solve problems together. That's a really good way to build relationship. Socializing is fine to unwind, but I don't think, in my experience, socializing is what necessarily builds the best relationships.
Yeah, there is one more question for
Okay.
you.
Yes.
From Dr. Mallika Tripathi, and she's writing over here. In spite of your genuine efforts, if you find people non-cooperative, what would you like to recommend for such people?
Excellent question. Okay, this is hard, and it happens, right? There are some people who are very jaded, who by default don't trust others. Like, I have met people, because in New York, there are people from all over the world who come here and work. There are people who have literally fled communist dictatorships. And throughout their life, they have grown to be very mistrustful of people. So it's amazing, growing up in a democracy like America or India, you are generally very trusting. You can be pretty trusting of other people. But even in countries like America and India, and especially in countries which have very dictatorial systems, there are people who just don't trust other human beings because they're afraid, hey, this person is going to rat me out, or, so I wish I had an answer. To be very frank with you, I don't have a solution, but I have things that can help go part of the way. It takes time. So when there are people who genuinely will not trust you, what I have found has worked for me in my career is not 1, 2, or 3, but multiple cases where I did something that surprised them. At first, I remember I was working with somebody and they thought, oh, clearly he can't genuinely be trying to help me. He wants something, right? That's what they are thinking. But then the second time they see, oh, actually, I didn't want something. I actually helped them. By the third, fourth, fifth time they see I'm actually helping them. Because I feel, look, ultimately, depending on whatever culture, and I don't mean just country or background, because sometimes people have grown up in a certain kind of family background, or maybe they were betrayed by their close friends. Maybe they were betrayed by their family members. So they just do not trust other people, right? If there are people like that for some reason who are difficult and uncooperative or have an ego, so the first thing is to treat them with a certain respect and listen. So if you have a colleague who just doesn't like to work with you and says, listen, you are all wrong. Just come my way. I'm the leader. I'm the smart person. Follow my thing, right? Now, by the way, if they are your boss, you should find a new job. Because if those uncooperative people are above you, unfortunately, they set the culture. And I have worked in companies like that. I have worked in some companies where I worked for a person who was very much like that. And I decided, okay, I'm not going to go work for her anymore. I'm going to find a new job. So if they are above you, find a new job, because it'll be very difficult to convert them. I'm not saying you can't, but you need a skill much higher than mine. You need to be like, I don't know, like, somebody like that, to convert a person like that. That's beyond my skill level. But if they work for you or they are your peer, then chip at it. After a while, they are likely to see, oh, this person, they never really wanted something. They genuinely helped me. And they have empathy, because people are human and people respond to kindness and respect. They may not trust you in the beginning. They may not trust you the first 5 times. But by the 6th, 7th, 8th time, they'll say, oh, this person is really good, and they will be won over. And when they argue with you, they debate with you, don't argue back. Because if you argue back, people become defensive. And then they will dig in further to their arguments. So sometimes if somebody believes very strongly in something that is the opposite of what I believe, instead of telling them that they are wrong, I will say, hey, tell me more. So this is, by the way, this is a phrase I often use at work. When somebody says something, I will say, hey, tell me more. And then they're a little bit disarmed when they hear that, because they're expecting me to fight back. They're expecting me to argue, right? But my method is a little bit more like Aikido, where I'm using their strength. And I'll be careful to say I'm not using their strength against them. I'm using their strength to get us both rowing the boat in the same direction. So if they attack me, I mean, not physically attack me, but in a job, if they attack me and they start saying, hey, you're wrong, we should go this way, and they are obstructionist, I'll just sit down with them and say, hey, tell me more. Tell me more. Where are you coming from? And the minute people feel I genuinely have an interest in what they are saying, they become disarmed. So I would say, if there are people who are difficult to work with, try to disarm them. Ask them, hey, tell me more. Why? So when you don't, like in this Aikido martial art way, where you don't just head on collide with them, but let their energy flow, they are likely to. There's no guarantee, by the way. Some people are really difficult to work with. And I wish I could tell you that I have a solution for every kind of human being, but I would be lying. Just stay away from those people. The ones who are beyond hope,
Stay away from them. Yeah. Any other question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I have one question. Actually, two. Sir, you tell the story of that person who helps you in that problem. So I would like to listen how he helps you. And my second question is that you said that we have to behave friendly with the other persons or the our colleagues. So I think that sometimes if your behavior is too much friendly, then it might be lose disciplines and our work and all this thing work speed. So in that condition, what we have to take decision or what we can, our behavior must like that. There is one sentence that boss is always right and all these things. So in that condition, what you solve that problem that some people are taking benefits of our friendly behavior. So this is my two questions.
Oh,
I would like to listen your experience about that.
sure. I especially love the second question. I want to start with an answer to the second question. And I'm glad
Yeah.
you asked this, because one of the things I've learned in my career, now, by the way, some organizations are different. Obviously what I'm telling you doesn't apply to every domain in this world. Like, for example, the military is a clear exception.
Yeah.
You are in the military, it is very top down. The boss says something and you got to do that. Disobedience is called insubordination, and subordination is a crime, right? So in the military, you do exactly what your boss does, and the boss is supposed to order people around, and that's a different culture. But the vast majority of circles in society, and this evolving society, and I think over time, even the military will change. So first of all, a lot of my advice is for general workplaces, is for civilian society. Okay, so because in the military, hey, you give up your life if the general says so. So the rules are a bit different, and military is about war. So now what happens is some people bring a very top-down approach of this what works in very specific narrow domains like military and other places to businesses. And I would say businesses you need to use a different approach. So most places, well, the first thing is that if you look at it very logically, the boss isn't always right. The boss's job is not to be right, but the boss's job, the boss is like the coach of the team. The people who are the best people are the players. If you think of a football team or a cricket team, right? What helps a team win, or in America we play a lot of basketball and other things, it's not the star player necessarily, but it's the coach. So the job of the boss is more like the job of the coach, is to bring out the best talent in other people. Because look, I used to be a software developer. I like to believe that I was a very good software engineer, but now I'm no longer. The people who, because I have not programmed for a long time, when I think of my job as leadership, my job is not to tell other people how to write the code. My job is to know the reality that they can write code, or they can build products, or they can do design work or project management or product management much better than I can, right? I would be lying to myself if I said I can do their jobs better than them. That's never the case if you're in a leadership role. My job is to help them bring the best in other people, is to help them be the most successful. So my job as a leader, and this is somewhat contradictory to what some business books will tell you, my job as the leader is not to be the one making the decision, but my job as the leader is to help the best decision emerge. And there's a difference in having the best decision emerge versus me making the best decision. I might be a referee who might pick the decision, but the choice is often not from me, because the people who are close to the ground, by that I mean close to the actual details of the work, they often know the right answers. And if you go with their solutions, then they have the buy-in. Because if you don't have the buy-in of the team, they're not going to support. And by the way, taking advantage of friendships isn't necessarily, I think of it a different way. Because look at it this way, you can have respect with other people and treat them very well, but still be clear that your job is a certain job, right? So for example, in my job, I have a lot of very close personal friendships with people I work with, right? But those personal friendships are built, as I was mentioning, on working together, solving problems together, rowing together. They are not built on drinking together, right? If your friendships are built on drinking together, yes, you will have problems having respect with your team and telling them what to do, because that is not a genuine work friendship. A work friendship should be built on collaborating as a team, and in a team, different people have roles. So if my job is the job of the coach, right? And I say, listen, this is how so imagine it's a football team, and I'm the coach, and I tell the team, okay, you're gonna be the forward, you're gonna defend, goalkeeper, you should focus on this, right? If I say that, they have to listen, because if the forward says, no, I'm just going to go run with the ball and try to score a goal, the team is going to lose, right? They have to listen to the coach, not because the coach is a better kicker, not because the coach knows how to score a goal better, but because the coach's job is to coordinate the team. So my job as a leader is to make the decision on how and what everybody should do. But that doesn't mean that I am their superior. I'm not anybody's superior in any job, right? It just so happens that I'm a coach. I have experience as a coach. So they would respect me because I have built this relationship. And, so the thing is, that's why I'm very glad you asked this question, because this is a very important question. When I say genuine relationships and friendships, if you have the wrong kind of friendship, if the friendship is only based on, going to movies, sports, and drinking together, then yes, you will have trouble working with the people. But if the friendship is based on doing actual work, because then they understand your role as the boss. And your role as the boss is not somebody who's better than them. But as a boss, your job is different. So the same way, the coach is not better than the star player in the team. But the coach is the boss. If the coach says, goalkeeper, you stay at the goal, or if the coach says, hey, we are so behind, no point trying to stop any more goals, goalkeeper, you should also be playing on the attack, then the goalkeeper also plays on the attack. Not because the coach is better, but because that is the coach's role. So I think what's important in a company is for people to understand and respect each other's role. And the role as a boss or as a leader is, in my eyes, a lot more like a coach or a teacher. It is. So I think that a boss's job is like a coach and a teacher, and not a military general. In most companies, there are definitely exceptions. Like I said, the army is an exception there. Yes, that you manage differently. And to your first question, you kind of said, how do you learn? I'll quickly summarize how I learned from my colleague, or how when they solved the problem. It is just having an open heart and an open mind. First thing to learn is to genuinely have a curiosity. Because when I asked my colleague, I translated my computer programming problem into English and asked this person, I genuinely, perhaps in my heart, I had some way of wanting to explain to this person. I was open to the fact that they could actually solve something I cannot solve. So you have to have genuine curiosity. You cannot fake it. So if you want to learn from your colleagues, or ask for help, you genuinely have to believe that they could give you a solution better than your own solution. And if you are a truly good at your job as a leader, as a manager, and if you are not insecure, you don't have to tell people you are the boss. You don't have to be the boss, right? And the boss is definitely not always right. I know that from my experience. I've managed, several hundred people, and most of the people in my team had better solutions than I did. The reason I was in the job was not because I was right or because I was a better player. It was because I was an experienced coach. I hope.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you, sir. I got the idea about, and I like the example that you explained. The boss is like a coach. I like that solution, and the first person answer is that open hardness. It might be solution of all the problems. It might be boss, or it might be worker, or all these things. So open hardened person will welcome all the problems and can solve all the problems too. Thank you, sir. Thank you for a nice solution.
You must welcome.
I think you have already given up more than 1 hour. So you want to take more questions, or we can wind it up?
I'm good. I can take a few more questions if you.
Okay.
Why don't we do 3 more questions if people have? And then
Okay.
I'll give.
There is one question by this Ruchika Rawat, and she writes, "Sir, you mentioned that we should be helping people at our work with. What has she written? At work we work with, but if it is consuming a lot of our time, how should we manage it?" This is what.
Oh, that's a very good question. This is a question that particularly applies to cultures like India and in the US too.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think we should help others, but if somebody is repeatedly asking us for help, and it is costing time from our own work, it is obviously important to communicate to the other person in a very respectful way that, listen, I care about your job. I want to help you, but I can help you so much. Right? Beyond that, hey, like I have to do my own responsibilities as well, and maybe you can help me with some of those things. So yes, that is also a very important question. When I say that you want to help others, I don't mean that you should be doing it at the cost of everything else. You should help people. Everything has to be in moderation. You need to make sure that when you need to do your own work, you set aside time, you focus, and you let other people know. There are some companies I know which even had this very funny custom that in your job, if you didn't want to be disturbed, now maybe this works in some kind of funky companies, not everywhere, but people used to have a red hat, and they would wear the red hat. That meant if you are wearing a red hat, it meant that I'm totally focused on my job right now, please don't disturb me. So if you are open for somebody else coming up to you and asking for help, you put your hat away, and you put on your hat. That means right now I'm focusing. So you can create cues like that. If you have an office, you can decide that you open the door to your office at a certain number of times. That means people are welcome to walk in. If you are focused on something, close the door. What I used to do was, when I worked at the New York Times, a lot of people would come to me asking for help. And I was generally pretty open. So I did two things. One, I set up office hours where people could book time on my calendar to come ask me for help. That was one thing. The second thing I did was, sometimes when I was deeply focused on something, I closed my office door and I put a printed sign on my door saying, hey, right now I'm working on this project heads on. Unless it's an emergency, please contact me after a certain time. So, this way you can show respect to the other people. You can be kind to them, but you can also say, hey, right now, so rather than be rude and say, hey, I'm busy, I can't talk to you right now, you just put a sign outside your door. Or if your company, if you are a kind of a fun company, put on a red hat which says, hey, I'm busy. But if you do that, you can balance. So you need to balance both. Yes, absolutely, you should help other people. And yes, you should make sure you help yourself. And the key for this is, and as in the airlines, when you fly in an airplane, there's a sign which says, put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others. And the reason for that is, you can only help others if you are in a strong place yourself. So even if you are flying in an airplane with a child, they say, put on your own mask before you try to put the mask on your own child, because you can't save your child if you can't breathe, right? So you got to put on your own mask first. So first of all, make sure you do your job very well. You give enough time for your job. You can use things like the Pomodoro technique. If you aren't familiar with it, search Google for Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomato. And what people do is they use a kitchen timer. So they use a kitchen timer for 25 minutes. They move, and the reason it's called a Pomodoro is because in Italy, people use it for cooking. So they put on the timer and they decide, for the next 25 minutes, I'm going to focus only on this part of my job. And if my phone rings, if somebody walks up, I'm not going to get distracted. For 25 minutes, only thing I do is this one hard focused job. So make time for yourself. Make sure you put on your own oxygen mask, you prioritize, because you can only help other people if you have helped yourself. So you've got to be taking care of yourself first.
Yeah. Any other question? Yes, participants.
Hello, sir. So my question is that, there, like, if you work on a team, so there is a breaking point or a point of frustration for everyone. And there are many people who are antisocial. They don't socialize.
Yeah.
So we don't know that what things he's going through or he's suffering through. So
Yeah.
as a team leader, how you deal with that situation to bind them up together and to motivate them for working rather than what they're going through.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one thing that sometimes help is, if somebody is focused on, let's say they're having a problem at home, right? Let's say they're not getting along with their spouse. What's interesting is, sometimes if you talk to them about that problem, it actually makes things worse, right? Sometimes people need an escape. Let's say they have a big problem at home, right? So in that case, it is sometimes helpful to talk to them about work. Treat them with, is to solve work problems together. One, that will help them, because they will get distracted for a while from whatever problems they are having in their life. And the thing is, listen, if they come to the job, sometimes not only will it be bad for them and will suck their energy out of them, it'll also suck your energy. And sometimes people feel great. If somebody is sick, obviously you want to pay them the basic respect, or let's say their family member is sick. They come into the job, you pay them a certain respect, you ask them, how's your so-and-so doing? Is everything okay at the family? Can I help? But then you end that conversation and you don't treat them like a handicapped person. So the example is, imagine if somebody comes to the office, even if they are physically handicapped, right? If their leg is broken, you should treat them with the same respect as any other person. You don't say, hey, your leg is broken, how's your leg, or something. Or if somebody's on a wheelchair, you treat that person with the exact same respect you treat anybody else. So if somebody has a problem at home, you ask them just enough to show that you care, and you should genuinely care. But beyond that, treat that person with the respect that, hey, they are in a job. They are in a job like everybody else, and ask them for help, ask them to solve problems. So people may be anti-social, and it's perfectly within their rights. If somebody doesn't like you, they don't want to chat with you and so on. That's their will. And we shouldn't try to force people to be social with us. But it is their job, and they're getting paid to work with you. And they can't refuse to work with you. So people can refuse to socialize with you. That is totally their right. That's fine. But if they don't work with you on a project and they don't collaborate with you, well, those people shouldn't be in the company. Or, you try to coach them, you try to help them. Sometimes you bring in a professional like HR or somebody who can help with that. But the thing is, a person can refuse to be social with you, but they cannot refuse to work with you because, they are getting a paycheck from the company. So that I believe is somebody's job. They have to engage with others. And there's a respectful way to ask them to engage. And that's why, if you walked up to a colleague and you ask them, so, how's it going? How's your life? Or what's the latest movie you watched? It's within their right to say, hey, I'm not interested in this conversation with you. But if you ask them, hey, how's your work going? And by the way, I don't mean just a generic question like, how's your work going? Like if you ask, in project X, have you been able to solve this? They can't really say it's not your business. Because in a company, every project is everybody's business, even if it's their department, right? Even if they are sales, you ask them, how's the sale to Procter & Gamble going? And they say it's not your business. Well, it is your business, because even though you're a graphic designer, but you care because you're part of the company. It is your job, right? The same way in a family, one husband or wife cannot say to the other, that, oh, how's this food coming along? Oh, the cooking is not your business, right? You can't say that, because everything is everybody's business. In a company, while certain things are certain people's responsibility, responsibilities can be separate, but the business is everybody's business in a job. So if you ask people things about the specifics or the details of their work, they have to engage. So that's how you socialize with people who are antisocial, because you don't actually socialize in a personal context, you socialize in a business context.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So I think this much is enough for
Right.
today. Thank you so much. Yeah, we enjoyed listening to you and our participants too, because it was a very practical session. And I think whatever you have told to them, your experiences and other things, practical things that you have faced, I think they will be like very good examples for them that they can use in their life. Yes, Karanjit, you want to ask something now?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening,
okay.
sir.
Oh, very late.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sir, to make our image good in front of someone, we try to please someone. And so pleasing everyone is also not good. Even when a person is wrong, and only because of his or her designation, we try to please him. And it leads to a problem in a personal life. So what are your views on this?
So, it's one thing, helping people and respecting people and pleasing people are three different things.
Yes, sir.
And it's important to respect people. It's important to help people. Pleasing people genuinely is not a particularly effective strategy. That goes to the earlier question, when a colleague of yours asked me that people could take advantage of things, right? So I think in general, you can be a good human being to other people without necessarily being a nice person. There's a difference at times. So I would say in general, trying to be a people pleaser is not an effective strategy, because what will happen is then you will train people to take advantage of you. So what you want to do is you want to genuinely help people, but by pleasing people is, for example, I'll give you an example. If somebody says, hey, you know, this is a part of my job, will you just do this for me? That's not helping people, right? If somebody is being lazy or wants to shirk their responsibilities, right, and says to you, so this is I'm really glad you brought up this question. What I want to say to you is, imagine this scenario. You're working with a colleague, and this colleague wants to take half a day off, and they want you to do their work for them, right? And let's say this colleague is somebody who's slightly more senior to you, or you respect them for some reason, or you want to learn from them, or for whatever reason you want to please them. And this colleague says to you, hey, I'm gonna stay at home, and can you just do my job for me? Now that is not the same as what I was talking about, helping people. If you say yes, you're actually doing yourself a disservice, because number one, now this person will respect you less, right? What you should do in a scenario like that, if somebody says, you can say to them, listen, I like you, I respect you, but I'm afraid I'm not going to do this for you. Not because, you know, I can help you with other things, but right now I have my own other priorities, right? So the thing to do is, it's very important to learn how to say no, and not to fawn over and grovel to other people. It's important to say no, but you can say no in a way that shows that you care about the other person. So, you know, one thing I could say to somebody was, if somebody said to me, listen, hey, you know, Rajiv, I want to, like, hey, man, you're my good friend at work. I actually don't want to do this because I want to take half a day off and play hooky, and, you know, I'm going to go watch a movie with my friends. Can you cover for me at the office? I'll say to them, listen, hey, I really care about you. You are my friend. If you had a different kind of problem, you know, if you had a family member sick, or you had hurt yourself, I could see, I would go out of my way to help you. But I'm not going to go help you with something like this, because it is not good for you. It is not good for me. So it's very important to be direct with people. So you can be direct with people in a way and let them know that you care about them. So even when you say no to somebody, right, there's a way to say no without being rude. Because what you can say is, listen, I care about you very much. You are a very important, valuable person to me, and I'm not going to help you with this, right? When you say that, you are saying to the person, you are important to me, I care about you, but I also care about myself, and I'm not going to do this. And when you do that, when you know, so there's a very important concept. It's called having boundaries. And whether it's your personal life or it is your job, it is critically important to have boundaries. Because if you don't have boundaries, you'll become a person who is, you know, what other people call a doormat, right? And if you become a doormat, everybody will step on you, and even good people, right? Because people will become trained to take advantage of you, not because they are bad people, not because they are the kind of people who use other people, but because that's what you're training other people to do. So if you have your boundaries, you should know how much you are willing to help other people, that it will not make you frustrated. And by the way, if you're too nice a person, here's the other problem you'll face. If you go out of your way to please other people and do things for them that you really didn't have the time for or didn't have any interest in doing, then inside you will become frustrated. And if you become frustrated and angry inside, what will happen is you will actually become a bad human being, because you will have now resentment towards these people. You will not genuinely like them, because you will inside be despising them. That, oh man, I'm stuck at work for 4 more hours because of this person I was trying to help. And then they will sense it. So what will happen is that person will not like you. So your goal was try to become liked. It actually backfires. You know, when you go out of your way to become liked by other people, what mostly happens is that you end up being taken advantage of, and they don't like you, right? So because you become frustrated with them. So it's very important to tell other people that you care about them. You will help with them where it makes sense, but say no with love and respect. So I think that's very important. There are some people, you know, and particularly some cultures where people are very good at saying no, because they have grown up in countries where, you know, I worked with people who came from certain cultures, and I was working with them. I asked them for something. They were like, no, let me think about that. No, that's their answer. Let me think about that. No, you know, like it's almost a joke. They can say no with impunity, right? Now to many of us who are very social people, saying no that way doesn't come naturally. So what you say to somebody is, hey, you know, you are important to me. You are my friend. I love you. I care about you. And I'm afraid I'm not going to help you with this. You know, you don't say I can't. You don't make up an excuse. You don't lie. You don't tell them that, hey, I can't help you because, oh, I have this other thing at home. You say to them that I care and I respect. At the same time, I also care and respect about my own time. I have other priorities. And in this case, I'm not going to help you. Or I'm not going to do this thing to please you. And then people will actually respect you more. So that's my view.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this answer. So how's Julie ma'am and Raj? Hope they are doing good.
Yes, they're doing very well. Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
then. Now I think we should end the session. Already more than the time allotted. So I once again thank you so much that you managed the time, because we know the difference is great between New York and India. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for collaborating. And I think we all have understood that how important collaboration is for our lives. With that note, I think we'll end the session. Thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.